Imagine it's akin to receiving a terminal diagnosis. I mean, you realize what you thought you had, or at least what you were convincing yourself would continue in what you had, is going to go away in some way. I mean, it would be grief, which, by the way, I think is a really healthy emotion for us to feel in the church revitalization process, because revitalization includes loss. And if you can't grieve that loss, name it and honor it, you can't move forward.
In this episode, we react to Paul VanderKlay, a local pastor in California, who is putting out there just the decline of his church and how he only has probably about a year left in his church. So we talk and reflect upon how do you pass through this? What's the identity? What are the options? What would we do? All this comes to light, and it's a really interesting story. I think you'd really like it if you're interested in basically the decline of churches in America, and if this situation is popular or similar situation in a lot of different contexts. I hope you enjoy.
The future is now.
Welcome to the DSP, guys. We've got the wise one himself, Pastor Zach Olson. Welcome
Is that
back.
a new nickname, the Wise One?
That's been his nickname.
For a little while.
That's a
I
long.
thought maybe that just came about because of the series on Proverbs.
No, this
And
is
then
a
I
long.
missed a podcast or two.
I think it was
and
actually
next thing I
Jake.
know.
When I had my office upstairs, he put on my nameplate, the wise one.
Jake did that?
Why did you do that?
Wow.
What was about? No.
And that's why he's the best.
He recognized wisdom when he saw it in the face.
Real recognize real.
So was it something you said to him? Was it or?
No, I literally just saw the nameplate and chuckled.
Oh, and you just accepted it. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I will take this one.
I mean, there are a lot of names maybe that I would rebel against, but this one is okay.
yeah, okay.
The Wise One.
Pretty proud of that one.
That's a good one.
Okay.
We've got Mr. Multiply here himself in the flesh, Pastor Scott Vanderplug. What's on your mind today? What's exciting in your life?
Well, I just found out that Zach is the Wise One. That's
Yeah, there's no
exciting.
way you just found this out.
I literally
Podcast.
just
You've
found
been doing
that.
podcasts. I've
No, no.
introduced him as the wise
Look,
one.
I know that
Every-
he's wise. It's not that. It's that people call him the Wise One.
I'm pretty sure, like in the podcasts we've done, though,
You
he's
probably
introduced-
have.
100%.
I am so sorry, everybody.
100%.
I'm so sorry.
100%. We've called him.
This is why I'm not the Wise One.
Well, you also rebelled against Mr. Multiply too until I just forced it upon you.
Yeah. I'm not rebelling.
Okay, good.
Okay, well, here's what's going on in my life,
Yep.
which is this last weekend, I took my daughter, Rachel, which is our second daughter, and dropped her off at the University of Florida and then drove away.
All right. Could you describe to me, if I was walking in your shoes around Gainesville, Florida, what would I be feeling?
I cried like a baby.
I imagine that's exactly what I will do.
The whole time, or just like at certain
No,
times?
not the whole time,
Yeah.
just at certain times.
Yeah.
Was it anything in particular that caused the emotions to well up? Like something about that moment?
It just seems so final. You know, your child is moving out of your house.
Seemed so final.
Like you drop her off a couple hundred miles away. Will she ever come back? Maybe not. Like, certainly she won't come back the way she was just before we left. So
Oh, so it's like she's gonna change as
it's
a
like
person
that
the next time.
immediate transition from a child living in their parents' home to a child no longer living in their parents' home.
Could you compare this with your eldest, Marissa?
Oh, yeah. So here's the thing with Marissa is she went to university but did it at a distance online. So she continued living in her home. And then at some point, you know, she was busy working all the time. So there was sort of a transition in which we didn't see a lot of her because she was working 80 hours a week. And then she made a lot of money. So she bought a house.
Good grief.
And then she, you know, at some point before she got married, like she got married in November, but moved out in maybe March or April of that year. So she had moved over to her house, and we helped her move into her house. But her house isn't that far from our house, so it's right here in Port St. Lucie. So there was just sort of more of a kind of gradual or slow transition that was easier. It wasn't like
This is
so definitive.
Is Is this an advertisement for like online learning or distance learning?
No.
Keep them close.
It's not an advertisement. It's just an explanation of what parents might feel at moments like that.
Do you have a preferred future or preferred way to like send them off, Zach, for your kids?
No, not really. And that's why I'm really like, I'm tuned into what you were just describing about what it's like. Because, I mean, I think that's one of like, I don't know, at least right now, one of life's greatest cruelties is that you like invest your complete life into a kid only to prepare them to not need you anymore.
Right.
In that way. And I just think, right now, like if any of my kids, and they're younger, but if any of them were to say like, I don't need your help, I think that would be worse than them saying, I hate you. So, I mean, I'm really like tuned in when I see you going through this life transition to see what it's
Well,
like.
there's another interesting dynamic. And I remember this when I moved out of my parents' house, which is as a young person, you're excited.
Absolutely.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
oh man, I'm moving out of my parents' house. I'm excited to do it. I'm going to
Yeah.
face my future.
Yep.
So she wasn't feeling what Andrea and I were feeling.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, that's
You
so
should be more
harsh.
broke up right now.
Yeah.
No, and I don't want her to be.
No, I
That's
know.
so
but I'm just
harsh.
thinking, like,
I remember when I moved out of my parents' house, I was 22, and it was only like 2 miles down the road. But
Right.
I bought my own house. But we were in so many fights. It was like a pressure release. It was like I was like, thank goodness. It wasn't even excitement. It was just like, oh, finally I'm out. Like I wasn't
Okay.
excited. I was just like, it's a release of pressure. I don't know. And actually, I think our relationship got better because of that. So
Yeah.
because I moved out, it was like, okay, I wanted to see my parents whenever I got to.
I
got a
don't
chance.
think that I'll have a worse relationship with Rachel now that she's moved out. But it just won't be the same.
Was there any like, I mean, she's old. She's old enough to move out. Did you guys have any like territorial fights in the house or anything like that? No, that's not.
No.
It was just
nothing like that.
Oh, that's why it was so broken up because it's such a good thing ending. Mine was just a bad situation. It was like a fighting to my parents all the time.
Yeah, I don't think I was anything like that. Just what I would say is I've approached fatherhood like I wanted to raise these kids into adulthood. It's never been a goal of mine to like keep them young or try to hold. I mean, I've always approached like I am raising you to become adults. And it's like my life philosophy that I think being an adult is awesome. And I guess I want kids to enjoy their childhood, but your childhood shouldn't be the best part of your life. That's how I feel.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm not trying to like hold my kids into childhood. My philosophy has been to launch them into adulthood. But when you actually go to do it, ooh.
Yeah.
And how I felt, it sounds so funny. If I say it out loud, it'll sound even worse because I know how it sounds in my mind, which is, it's not like I feel like my only purpose in life is being a parent. I don't feel that way. I have more purpose beyond being a parent.
Sure.
But how it felt, dropping her off is like,
Purposeless.
yes.
Ooh.
Like, man, I just lost my purpose.
Or did you complete it? Or did it
Either
transition?
way.
Yeah.
Either way. It
Yeah.
just,
So
I felt a void, like, oh.
Yeah.
Do you think, I know like it's still relatively new, but is there a way that you could have prepared yourself for that? Like, so now I'm going to have this experience someday and I'm going to remember this moment.
Okay. No, there's no way you
It's
can
just,
prepare.
you have to experience it
You're just going to cry like a baby like I did.
for sure. I'll guarantee it.
You're gonna
I'm
holding
crying
on
now
to
thinking
Lydia.
about it.
You're
It's his daughter, but
You're,
I'm crying about
you're
it.
holding back the tears right now. Just think about just Lydia. Just,
Well, I was going to give this example of like a video I saw on TikTok and like, I'm trying to put the quote together, but I'm thinking, if I even attempt to say this, I'm weeping right here. So I'll stop. But I
If
would say,
ESP breaks down and next thing you know, like we're all just crying. I'm not far from it, just talking about it.
Oh my goodness.
what was it like as a father, you just described that, but as a husband, because I'm sure like Andrew had the
That
same.
made it like better and worse. Better because you're because we're both going through the same thing. Worse, because if I see Andrea crying, I start crying. If she sees me crying, she starts crying.
Oh boy, that's a lot.
Yeah. And how is Kate adjusting, and what is she saying about this change?
Kate hasn't cried.
What a goon. What
As far as I know.
what a gangster.
But I think it's, she said she outwardly is handling it just fine. But I think it's difficult for her.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it would be.
I don't know. So when you're the oldest, then obviously you have your two parents by yourself for some time.
Right.
Then the middle child, like Rachel, she always had another sibling in the house. But the third one just grows up thinking, okay, I'm the youngest, and, my parents have these other two siblings that they're concentrating on. So you never have like, the full weight of my parents' attention is now solely on me.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And sisters become friends. The friends that I've had right here in this house aren't here. So, I don't know. I can't imagine it's easy for Kate either.
There's a bunch of transitions that we go through life, I guess, and this is just
Yeah.
one of those landmark transitions. As a great transition, let's transition to church transitions. That's what we've got.
Life cycle.
That's what we're talking about here in this podcast today. I mean, even though this is like a huge moment, I think that's something I look forward to and don't look forward to at the same time.
Yep.
I think it's one of those things. Today we've got filled docket here, and it's really going to be just on one
We have
topic.
what?
A filled docket.
Oh, filled
I
docket.
thought you were thinking about Phil
I thought there
Dockett,
was someone
the
named
guy.
Phil.
No,
Yeah,
no,
Phil.
no. We don't have film. We've got a film or a video by a pastor named Paul VanderKlay. Paul is a friend of the ministry, at least a friend of yours, Scott. He runs a YouTube channel. Those links are in the description down below. And he had a video detailing some harsh realities of his church. The way we came about this. Scott, maybe you could say a little bit about this, but you saw this video last
Well,
night.
I just happened to watch it, and when I watched it, I admired it. And I admired it for a whole number of reasons. So in this video, basically what Paul does is he had a congregational meeting with his church where, as a congregation, they had to face the reality that their church had been declining and is now at a point where it may no longer be sustainable. They have maybe like a year worth of runway before they have, major decisions will have to be made. And maybe they don't even have a full year, and they have to face that there's been this decline, that the church may no longer be sustainable the way that it is, and then try to imagine, various different scenarios. And that was what the video was about. And what I admired was that Paul was willing to be so open about it, just in front of everybody. Here's the realities, here's, ideas I have. None of the options seem that great, so at this point, I'm just struggling with it all. But let me put this out there in the world in case putting it out there in the world causes other people to have ideas that might eventually be the way forward. And I just thought, wow, that was awesome. And my overall thought is, first of all, just admiration about that video. And then second, I wonder if we were going to do the same thing with our denomination, what that would look like. And in some ways, with this conference coming up, maybe we are.
Yeah, so this conference is coming up is November 8th. This is a pre-conference, 8 and 9.
And then 9, 10, and 11, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday will be the conference itself. And we're trying to draw people from the entire denomination to more or less talk about our future.
Links are in the description down below. But let's cut to the video here, Jake. Let's start at 120 and let's take it to 208. Zach, I don't know if you could. You haven't seen the video.
Zach
so
hasn't seen it
I'm
yet.
looking forward to it.
Yeah. So this is Paul VanderKlay, kind of just detailing out his church right now, the current state of his church.
So basically what happened was a few months ago, I asked the deacons, because I've been watching the financial reports, I asked the deacons to put together a one sheet of where our current income is and where our expenses are at. And if put down a nothing changes scenario, if nothing changes, then Living Stones can no longer operate with business as usual as of what date? And the deacons did this, and the date is September 2026. I knew this was coming. I've known this was coming for a number of years. Just recently, we had some very long-term faithful members they're aging. They're up in their 80s and 90s. There's transitions into skilled care facilities, some of these things, and I knew that with a number of these things that the overall picture would change. And so I did this to begin a conversation with the church and also to include those of you who are interested.
For wider context, let's see, DMD Works research shows that 80 to 120 years is the average life cycle of a church. In the CRC, it's about 60 years. That's what Paul was saying. And last year alone, 3,700 churches closed. A projected 176,000 churches will close by 2050. How does this reality, either in the micro level or the macro level, micro being Paul's church and pretend it was ours or yours, or the macro level, how does this reality shape the way we lead, preach, all of that? Even what's your initial takes to this? So,
I think it goes back to the conversation we were just having about kids and purpose and leaving the house and all that. If we're honest about the life cycle of a church, then that helps us be focused on our mission as a church. Like, we're not there to see how long we can last, but we're there to raise up disciples and leaders who are going to start new churches. And so if we know that from the outset, look, even PGA, we're 2 years old. In 60 to 80 to 120 years, PGA likely isn't going to be there, and it's not going to look anything like it is today. But Lord willing, by then, there will be like children and grandchildren from PGA who will maybe look back on us fondly. I don't know. But the whole idea is that perspective, that the life cycle is real, gets us focused on discipleship.
How does this change the way you lead and preach and your identity?
Let me ask some questions of the wise one.
Okay.
Now that I know his nickname, I knew he was wise before.
It's been about a year.
I think one of the reasons I want to ask this question, I think, Zach, you have a pretty good knowledge of the CRC as a whole in the role that you served in pastor church relations and otherwise. Of the approximately 1,000 congregations, do you happen to know offhand how many are in this predicament where they're in their maybe, let's say, final 5 years? Of the 1,000 congregations, how many are likely to close in the next 5 years or in the next decade?
Man,
is there an answer to
I
that
hate to say
question?
it, but that's a really hard, and here's why it's hard to answer is one, so as part of my work in PCR and in Thrive, I helped out with the pastor search portal and that kind of thing. And so in that, like, we hear a lot of people, a lot of churches are saying, hey, we're struggling to find a pastor. And then even then, when somebody would call PCR for us to come and help them work through a conflict.
Sorry, what's PCR?
Pastor Church Resources.
Gotcha.
Formerly Pastor Church Relations. But then they would be, we would see the signs, kind of like what Paul's saying is there is decline, the finances are challenged, and all of these like end stage transitions cause a lot of anxiety. And in a context where there's a lot of anxiety and fear, there's a lot of conflict. And so I'm just
Yeah.
saying all of that to say, like, the people who are coming and reaching out to us, it could feel like everybody was in somewhat of that kind of situation. So it could feel like there's a huge number of CRCs, but our clientele were skewed.
Okay. How many people was your clientele? Like, how big was your clientele?
So I think I worked there for 4 years, and I don't know. I would say we were pastor search and churches experiencing some kind of conflict. 100 churches.
10%.
Yeah, now here's just a couple of things that I'll reflect on. First, I can reflect from my experience in our classes, which is the region of the CRC that we happen to be in, is called our classes. And in our classes, I've been involved in closing a number of churches. 5 at first, and then we got this idea of let's not close them, let's try to reboot them. And now we've done that 1, 2, 3 times at least, right? In Winter Garden, in Lake Worth, and in Miami, where instead of our classes just closing them down, Sunlight is like taken on, and we're trying to restart these churches. So I guess my experience is that that's like 8 churches in our classes, and I'd say all within the last 15 years. And here's what I realize is that actually churches are more resilient than that you would imagine. So you'd think, well, there's no way they can even last another year. Oh, they can last another 5 years because, and it might not be like they're doing anything healthy or that this church is vibrant in any ways, but they
Find a way.
are resilient.
Yep.
I think churches as bodies, as sort of organisms, like they're people who care about their church, and they find a way to carry it forward despite
Just keep clawing through
yes,
this
just keep
mess.
clawing through. It's very difficult to actually have a final Sunday and close the door. I think that's very difficult.
If it's 8 in our own classes alone, 49 classes, that's like almost 400 churches
It could be.
across the denomination, at least within that.
Well, and I don't know. Our classes could be an outlier.
Okay, that's fair enough.
So I guess what I'm just sort of reflecting on is very difficult to, so you'd say to yourself, like Paul says, we have 1 year left. Well, I'm sure, we'll listen to some of the options that he's going to put out there, and maybe they'll seize on one and that'll change the game. But many churches will find, like Living Stones obviously has a pastor, which is Paul. Zach's talking about churches that don't have a pastor but are finding ways to stay on, and they just reduce expenses. So a lot of times whatever building they have gets neglected. They're just not going to pour the money into keeping it up, so it starts getting neglected. They might not have a pastor, so they don't have any salary expenses. They keep their expenses very low and then find ways to meet those low expenses. So I do think churches have some kind of like resiliency, but whether a church of 30 people in a dilapidated building meeting together and they have no pastor and no real outreach to the community or vital ministry, whether it's good that they keep on going for the next 5-10 years, that's like another question we could have. But I guess I'm trying to get at, like if we were to just think about our denomination as a whole, what percentage of the churches are, let's say, less than 75 members? Do we know that?
I imagine that's yearbook data that we
probably could get to know
look
that.
up. Yeah.
Less than 75 members, probably.
Just anecdotally, I would say that this is the conversation that over 50% of our churches need to have right now, just to be aware, like, where are we in this life cycle?
50%.
50%. Yeah. And that's anecdotally.
That's a lot of percent.
Yep. We have a large number of churches. And they're, again, just my sense of like who's without a pastor, how long it's taking to get a pastor, the life cycle, when immigrants came and they founded their churches. A number of our churches, just by virtue of how old they are, like the church I served in Canada, I think they celebrated their 75th anniversary recently. The church I served in Grand Rapids is celebrating their 100th anniversary in 2 months. And so I think as a denomination, we're in this end stage life cycle, or at least a lot of our churches are.
And I wonder,
Just by age.
So one thing I appreciate about Paul's video, I'm sure we're going to watch some more of it and kind of get the flavor of it, is he really starts thinking about future possibilities. So him becoming bivocational, or shall the church use, take a loan against the assets of the building, which may be substantial, in order to do some revitalization, and potentially, be able to rent out to other ministries? Should they merge with other churches that are nearby? Should they sell the asset, have a tremendous asset, and then replant? They're thinking about all these kinds of options, and I thought, wow, great conversation. Mm-hmm. And here's another thing I noticed, which is churches that might be in this stage, they're 60, 70, 80, 100 years old, like they may have declined in membership, they may be aging, they may no longer, with their budget, be able to afford pastors or staff, but they have a property that might be worth millions. So they have a lot of things they could do. There could be a tremendous future in front of these churches. Like, man, if you have an asset that's a couple $1 million and you can sell that, and then you could go rent a storefront and start a vital ministry there, that could be really worthwhile. So anyway, I know Paul's going to walk us through that, but I just thought, wow, these are the kind of great conversations that need to be had. And it just struck me, boy, if there is some way to have them at scale, like, all right, let's say 50% of our churches are at least in some stage where they ought to have this conversation. There might actually not be millions, but maybe even billions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that could be redeployed toward some future. Anyway,
let's.
I just think about the money side of that. So you're right. Like with the building, the property, all that. I mean, we could fund a lot of new ministry if that was the decision, was to sell it.
Right.
And even the way Paul talks about it when he had his deacons test the vitality of the church, it was through resources, right? So how long can we fund this ministry? And I think that's a dynamic that's important to think through, is like, on the one hand, lacking money is one of the signs of vitality. Like if you don't have money, you can't run a ministry.
Yeah.
If you have a lot of money, there's a possibility for vital ministry. And yet, like you were to ask me, like, what's the mark of a healthy church? I'd probably lead with things like multiplication and discipleship, preaching the gospel. It would be like enthusiasm and participation of volunteers in the ministry. And then I guess I would have to include they meet budget, or the people are generous, however we want to talk about it. And so I guess in all of it, like I would hate to reduce the conversation just to money.
No, I'm not meaning to do that.
No, and I'm just like waxing something on this, but so money is a really important dynamic in all of this, but it's not the whole story. But in some ways, it's like the one thing you can't.
Maybe it's like when you take someone's temperature, you can realize that there's something else going on.
That could be.
Yeah. It's a necessary part of it. I mean, you can't go without it, but it's not the whole thing. So, let's get the reaction, or at least his interpretation of the congregation's reaction. Let's skip to 240 to 340, Jake.
Clicked away, because a good number of people click away after the first 30 seconds of a video. And so we handed out that one sheet yesterday, and a one-page version of this much longer document that I had, handed that out to the church. And it was most of the members were sort of quiet. This isn't the kind of news they want to hear. This is difficult. It means change. I've spent a lot of years trying to maintain the ministry of the church as best I could for those members. And I've done other things in other venues. For example, worked on church planting, done the YouTube thing, worked in various denominational projects. I've been doing this kind of thing for better than 20 years. But now things are going to have to change locally. This year alone, we added 5 new members. 3 of them were adult baptisms. Those were all really good things. But at this point, probably not enough to change the overall trajectory of what's coming. So Living Stones and I have to have a longer conversation.
So he describes presenting to a quiet, heavy congregation, heavy moment type of congregation. What's the emotional cost of acknowledging the decline of this, beloved church?
Imagine it's akin to receiving a terminal diagnosis. I mean, you realize what you thought you had, or at least what you were convincing yourself would continue and what you had, is going to go away in some way. It would be grief, which, by the way, I think is a really healthy emotion for us to feel in the church revitalization process, because revitalization includes loss. And if you can't grieve that loss, name it and honor it, you can't move forward.
The wise one speaketh. If you can't say that one more time, if you can't, would you say?
If you can't acknowledge the loss,
acknowledge it,
and honor it,
honor
and
it,
grieve it.
What do you mean by honor it?
Just to say, for Living Stones, he talked about 5 new members, 3 adult baptisms.
Yeah.
And then throughout Living Stone's history, God has moved through that church, through his ministry. People have come to know the Lord. People have been supported through difficult times. God has revealed, there's raised up leaders. I mean, God has done awesome things in Living Stones. And so that's all worth honoring, honoring God for what he's done.
Yeah.
But if the ministry closes, that's not going to happen in the same way any longer. And so it's just like Scott had a lot of really great times with Rachel in his house, but it's done in a certain way. She's going to come back, and there's going to be new, sweet, and different times, but it's not like it used to be. And if he's just holding on to the Rachel that was, this new relationship isn't going to happen.
I'm just going to have tears.
I just saw his eyes well up.
That's my goal for this time. I'm not leaving until I see you cry. No.
Okay.
But if for the next stage of your relationship, there has to be a letting go of the previous one,
Sure.
to some degree, and that's really the truth about the grief cycle in actual human death, but also in church death, is if we can't grieve it, then we're just going to hold on to it, and everything we do afterward is going to be just trying to make it what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just sitting here thinking about this since you made it so personal. No, I'm just kidding around. I've been the pastor of Sunlight Community Church for 22 years now. And I guess I would like to think that my entire identity is not wrapped up in just the church I pastor. Certainly my relationship with God is much bigger than that. Certainly all my relationships and who I am as a person is much bigger than just a ministry, which, as Zach's pointing out, could change, could be different, whatever. But I think I would not be able to not take it super personally if, as an example, Sunlight were failing. I wonder how I would keep myself from feeling like a failure.
Yeah, there's a personal grief that is probably held alongside organizational grief.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So, if you've been a part of a church for a long, long time, then just maybe that's why everyone's silent, because it's like, I don't know. I'm putting myself in people's shoes, but I'm admitting that on the one hand, I hope it wouldn't be this way. Hopefully my identity is much bigger than, that. But I'm also, I guess, just willing to admit, man, I think I would have a pretty tough time with it, emotionally speaking.
I think you as the senior pastor for Sunlight, if Sunlight failed, or maybe I guess when it does eventually, 120 years hopefully from now, well, I'll be long gone. But yeah, you would experience that grief. But I think a lot of the people here would experience the grief, like we all failed for sure, like, or whoever's left at that time. The long-staying members would just be like, yeah, I can't believe we failed. Like, they're part of the building of this church and the part of the, I guess the decline. I don't know. Would they be part of it?
If people didn't feel like that, you failed a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, I guess
right?
so.
Because, what you're talking about is, your identity is not fully wrapped up in this, but you're fully invested.
Yeah.
Like, the way I see you operate is that you give this place 100% of yourself. Mm-hmm. At the same time, maintaining a distinction between you and Sunlight. And I think a lot of us, like when we're really bought into what we're doing in the church, ownership is a natural part of that. And so we start to invest ourselves, our time, our resources, all of that, our love, our emotions. And so I think it's a really positive thing when we feel like, man, did we fail? Not because bad feelings are good, but because that bad feeling reveals a deep love and commitment.
Yes, and that's what Paul was talking about. Like he's got a committed base of deeply loving people for loves the church, and they love it that way, and they've shown that love in X amount of ways. I mean, and
this is why I think the life cycle is really helpful to have in your mind, because like when I don't know when I'm going to die, right? But if I live to a ripe old age and I die, it's not because my family failed at keeping me alive.
Yeah.
It's just because this is what happens. And so if we had that more in our mind of one day this is going to die, I think it helps us at least to frame those grieving emotions, not as failure, but as it's time to let go.
I guess that makes sense, because we know as people we're going to die. So we prepare for that inevitability,
But now this is my question to Zach, because I totally get it. Mm-hmm. We're all going to die. We know that. Scripture teaches it, and our experience confirms it. We're all going to die. But I guess experience tells us that organizations like churches are going to go through a life cycle, but it doesn't seem as inevitable. Yep. What I mean by that is, it seems like with churches that isn't there a way to have some new vision or new, like, to gain some kind of like, all right, vitality again?
That was my question too. I was like wondering, okay, when we were talking about grief, I think that's fair. But when do we stop grieving and start to fight, or choose not to grieve and choose to fight, versus like, okay, time to grieve, like it, to me it's, and when I say fight, I really just mean like, okay, let's try to reorganize, re-envision, that kind of stuff. That's what I really mean. When does that happen? How does that happen? Should that happen? I guess it's contextual, hyper contextual. I don't know Paul's church. I know at Sunlight, like what Scott said, I'm gonna have cockroach mentality. Dude, I'm gonna like try to survive. We're gonna do everything we can to like survive whatever apocalypse comes for us. And that's it's like, I don't know. We're not dying. That would probably be my mentality. I don't know. I can't speak like I've been there because I haven't been there. So
yeah,
because there's certainly emotions involved, and I couldn't imagine fighting with staff or church members. I mean, it's not the case here at all. So
can I try? I'm gonna like reframe it without answering the question. Sure. Maybe Zach wants to answer the question, but at least for me, what I think a little bit about, and I think people tend to think this way, is not so much, maybe not so much this death question, but like, what legacy am I leaving behind? So, like for me now, I've been pastor here. Yeah, I'm in my 22nd year at Sunlight. And I think anyone who works anywhere at anything wants to leave it better than when they found it. I don't know. Sometimes I even think about at the end of Psalm 90 talks about human beings that were just like a breath, that we get 70 years, maybe 80 if we have the strength. Teach us the number our days are right. But at the very end of the psalm, which is a psalm of Moses, there's this prayer, and it's repeated. It says, establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, Lord, establish the work of our hands. And I think part of that, like Psalm 90 is this lament, man, what's, when you step back and you look at the point of life, what is it? And you'd like to think it made a difference that I lived. But apart from God, will it? I have great-great-grandparents that the only thing I really know about them is maybe their name, if I know that. So if I, their closest relative, don't remember them, certainly the rest of the world does not. Doesn't matter that they lived it all. And that's going to happen to us too. So there is some kind of thing where I think we, in our soul, pray, God, excuse me, may something I'm doing, the work of my hands, last or matter. So I can just imagine for Paul pastoring Living Stones, or for me pastoring Sunlight, or for you guys, you'd like to just think that there's going to be some lasting legacy.
I think about that all the time, quite honestly.
Oh, okay.
It's a constant thought in my brain, actually. It's probably a more prevailing thought than any other thing. Is that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so Psalm 90 is awesome.
This is because I just don't want to be toiling in futile or meaningless things. So, if I do something, I want long-lasting effects. That's what so I'll give you an example. This is a stupid example, but it's an example. My YouTube channels. I want to do YouTube because, I enjoyed it and I got into it. But then I started thinking, I'm like, man, what am I doing? Is this really going to matter in the long term? Is Rowan and Tegan going to find my videos someday and be like, oh, I'm glad he did those
Unicorn
videos.
power.
Yeah, I know, right? Am I going to do it? And some of those videos I want them to see. But some of the videos I'm like, I don't care for you to see. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're fine videos. They're just about, crypto or whatever. But then I started thinking, I'm like, man, I want to leave something for them. And, that's just my personal example.
Okay.
But for a church, should we be involved in some of the most longest lasting, meaningful, stay power ministries? And that's just kind of.
So these are my thoughts about it, because I've thought a lot about this too, which is I think I've been able to be involved in some unusual projects, like founding a Christian school. I think I've been involved in 5 or 6 building projects now where even the room we're in, I remember when this, was just the studs and the slab. And so I've been involved in a lot of building projects, and I've started to think to myself, wow, these buildings will still be standing when I'm gone, but do they matter? And I've started to think to myself, actually, that what does matter is my legacy of disciple making and disciple multiplication. At the end of the day, that'll be my legacy more than anything else. So that goes back to Zach's other point, which is, people who maybe came to Christ, that has an eternal impact. So if I'm able to reach people for Christ, that's a big deal to me, which is why I think the gospel is important. But then, not just that I brought them to Christ, but that hopefully I've discipled them to the point that they can disciple people who will disciple people who will disciple people. And, down to the 8th, 9th, 10th generation, no one's going to remember me, but it's still my legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to me to be more important than building projects or organizations. Not that these organizations aren't accomplishing those same things. I think they are. So I'm not like trying to denigrate that. Just and maybe that's part of my passion for church planting too. Is like, okay, Zach might be right. There could come a day where even though I wouldn't want to face it, my identity would hate it. This church might die. Well, if there's like 25 other churches that are planting other churches that are planting other churches as a result of the fact that I pastored this church, well then, and I don't know, maybe all that sounds selfish too. Like, oh, I want a legacy. Well, it's not really about me.
Yeah.
But you just don't want all the work that you put into life to be meaningless.
And we won't know that until we get on the other side of eternity, right? Like that's the truth.
Only God can make it
Yeah.
meaningful,
He'll
which is
tell
why I
you.
think the prayer,
Yeah.
establish the work of my hands. Because if God doesn't establish the work of my hands, then it's gone.
I couldn't imagine like God telling you like, this is your legacy, Scott. Like this is what I did through you. And like, you're like,
Yeah, but
what's going on?
and I don't even care if I really think about it that I get the credit. I don't want the credit. I actually want to give all the glory to God. God did it. I didn't do anything.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like on the other side of eternity, like
Yeah.
here, no one's going to remember you, right? Like they might remember you for a couple generations, but then you'll be like a footnote in some, whatever yearbook. And then on the other side, you'll be like, I think this is just my imagination, right? That there'll be like tons of people come to Christ because of the work that God has done through you.
Do
and
you
just other people.
do you remember this myth of Sisyphus?
I haven't. That sounds like a
Jake, can
disease.
you look that up?
What?
I want to find the picture.
That sounds like a bad
because,
disease to get.
Basically, Sisyphus was, and I don't think I'll remember the whole thing, but basically being punished by the gods or whatever, and what he was caused to do is for eternity, he had to roll a rock uphill only to have it fall down again, and then roll the. Oh, look at this! There we go. So,
That's Sisyphus right there.
It's like toil without reward, purposeless toil, and I think our soul thinks that is hell.
Oh yeah.
Purposeless
it goes against how we were made.
toil. So this is where like you have to sense that there's some. Okay, you're going to put out all this Herculean effort to roll this rock up the hill. It's got to have some purpose. Mm-hmm. So if for eternity it just rolls back down. So I think like, anyway, this just came into my mind. This is what we don't want for our lives to amount to this, that we put in all this Herculean effort and then. So I guess even as we talk about like, well, we have to keep in mind that the church is going to die. Like, hold on. I'm pushing this rock up the hill because I think it's going to be awesome when it gets up there.
There's still like another year, right? Like this guy, I mean, for your church.
We can go on and talk more about that because he's going to show all our options. But I'm pausing for a second to talk about kind of the human reality. This gets to the grief of the whole thing is if you get the rock all the way up the hill and then you want to celebrate, but then the rock rolls all the way back down. You got to go and get it again.
Yeah.
But I don't think a church closing is the rock rolling back down.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is we don't want purposeless toil.
Right.
So if our entire church life was all this work that got into building this community, and in the end it's just gone. And there's no legacy, there's no lasting thing. That is very hurtful to our psyche, to our soul.
But what you said, like at the very beginning, you said, without God, none of it's possible.
That's 100%.
And I think so. Just in devotions this morning, I was reading from 1 Peter, and it talks about the prophets who they were through the Spirit of Christ, like searching out the Scripture to find out about the Messiah. And it says in verse 12 of 1 Peter 1, it was revealed to them that they were not serving themselves but you when they spoke of the things that have now been told you by those who have preached the gospel to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven. And then, in Hebrews 11, it talks same perspective, like we make an investment in the next, like those who come after us. And so we're not going to see the full scope of our legacy here because, one day nobody's going to remember our name. But
Right.
what they are going to be doing is they're going to be living. So I don't know if I want to say it exactly like this, but they're going to be living in a reality that we help shape.
Yeah.
And if
That's true.
that's good and honoring God, there's not a better legacy. We just don't see it. We don't get a statue for it.
And no one will give you
Yeah.
a statue for it, which is fine. But I think, like, again, back to my imagination. Can you imagine if you go to heaven and you start meeting people like generations later, and like you could get traced back to, oh yeah, it's because I helped run this ministry, or I helped, like, that'd be crazy to me. I personally, I like stepping into legacy. I like acknowledging it. So, like, my background, I love when I talk about my Lola in sermons, and one of the things that I'm moved by is like, hey, old people, you should know your ministry is not done because this is an old person and she like helped shape me. And if you're at any benefit to whatever I'm preaching or my ministry, it's because of an old person stepping into ministry. So you need to step into ministry too, because you have no idea what could shape. But even further than that, I learned in the last couple of years was that there were a couple missionaries who went to some remote mountain in the Philippines, and like they ran a VBS camp, and my Lola got saved there as a little girl. And that must have been like honestly, like 95 years ago.
Do you know their names?
No idea.
Oh, you should find out their names.
How am I supposed to do that? I don't know. Maybe look up the
History of Mission to the Philippines.
I guess so, huh? Let's see who went to Baguio. That'd be kind of crazy.
They
ran a VBS, and she gave her life to Christ there, apparently. And when she was a little girl, and like that might have been 95 years ago. Quite honestly, 95 years ago. So now here it is. I mean, this is crazy. So it's just like it hurts the brain to think so far back and to think so far forward. At least my brain. So I can't handle it. Anyway,
All right, let's go on with this video because I mean, at least for me, I'd like to get into some of Paul's proposed solutions just as a way of not even commenting on them because we don't know which ones will work or not, but just I admired his thoughtful process.
well, let's see. Let's take the first solution. This is at 3:45. It's a longer clip to 6:13, and it's growth as a solution. So let's get to that one.
Living Stones has been going for 62 years now, and over the last 30 years, there's always been enough money to meet our needs. Another response is, let's just grow our way out of this problem, which is a fine idea, but in many ways, that's what we've been trying to do for 28 years, and that I've been here, and for longer before that. It's probably not true that in the next year it will happen when it hasn't happened for the 28 years. Usually for an established church to hit a new cycle, a new growth phase, either you need a change in senior leadership and or a change in location. Churches themselves are very interesting. Churches are very interesting things. They are studied exhaustively in terms of change and growth, and there's innumerable strategies out there to help churches grow. The question of church growth and decline has been exhaustively studied in the United States, and over the years, I've done much of that reading and learning. Churches are not primarily factories or vendors that you can just change to create a different result. They are worshiping communities with personalities, idiosyncrasies, cultures, habits, and often lifetimes. I could talk for a very long time about why our church is the way it is, which is very much the way we love it, and why we love it. If we didn't love it, we wouldn't be doing what we do for her. I've also known for a very long time that once an amazingly faithful giving base that has sustained this church for nearly 30 years, some of them 60 years, can no longer do so, then business as usual at Living Stones will end. When I came to Living Stones in 1997, most of the core leadership and membership of the church was in their 50s and 60s. Now add almost 30 years to that number, and many of those people are at a certain age. Another reality is that, other realities have to do with the neighborhood and neighborhood change. And again, I've been working on this for a very, very long time. Another reality is that a neighborhood church of our size and general culture in a moderately sized American city usually has a lifetime of about 60 years. What our church is going through is what thousands of other churches are at the same time. There are also many Christian Reformed churches like ours. There are a number of them in my classes that I'm working with classes on. Even as in our own classes that are facing similar decisions. Every situation is different, partly because every church is unique. overall, we've done remarkably well to maintain the sort of ministry we've had in the context that we have. This is a credit to the leadership and the membership of the church. What this one sheet, that's a document, I've asked the deacons to adjust it. The deacons were concerned about, well, how much detailed information do we want to throw out onto the open internet? I said, well, let's have another document that probably gives people a fair idea of, the budget of the church and how this works, so on and so forth. When it comes to decisions, one of the things that we need to mentally separate out is my future and the church's future. For reasons I've done, for years I've done my best to try and help the church do ministry without disruptive change. I've worked a variety of jobs for the denomination, Sierra Leadership Network, Kingdom Enterprise Zone, that would bring income into the church to subsidize my salary and benefits. There have been a number of projects where I basically rent myself out to other organizations in the denomination.
All right. Was that till 6:15? Was that till 6:15? All right. So Paul notes growth as the solution here. What are you guys' reactions to what he was saying?
Well, I think what he was saying is that that is probably one of the first solutions you turn to is like, oh, well, could we grow this church so that it could sustain itself again? And he's basically saying, there's a whole bunch of reasons why that doesn't seem that likely anymore since we've been in a pattern for 28 years, or I can't remember the exact number of years he said. And it's hard for him to imagine what would cause that sudden growth
in the next year.
In the next year when we haven't had that in the last 28.
Yeah. What does that do for you as a leader, or as someone in the congregation who's like, oh, we're not growing? Like, how do you pass through that? How do you preach through that?
Like if you're having the same conversation and they say, why can't we just grow out of it? Mm-hmm. I think it's just like he said, is like, well, let's look at reality here.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to happen.
I think this is like, he proposes like different scenarios. What about this? What about this? That was his first one. And I think he's given the reasons why he doesn't see that as being like, oh, okay, we'll just grow out of this then.
So I think what does that do to a leader or a preacher when somebody says that to me? Mm-hmm. I think they say, are you kidding me? This is what I've been telling us for the last however many years.
Yeah.
And now it's important?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's like the raw, unfiltered version of what goes on inside of a pastor who's trying to lead some kind of a growth and change.
Yeah.
It's like, why is this important now and it wasn't 10 years ago?
Can we still, part of me, like the rebellious side of me says, like, we can still grow out of this, like we got a year. I mean, is there a time where I just need to give that idea up, or maybe Paul, or is it like
always throw the Hail Mary?
Yeah.
Well, at least he acknowledges that. He doesn't pretend that that's not there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it seems like there is still a little growth, right? He said there was like baptisms and
and that was his point. It's like, hey, the growth they have is not keeping up with the decline they're experiencing.
Yeah. Even me now is like, I don't believe it. I think you could grow, Paul. Do it, man. I don't know. That's just.
Well, I mean,
when do we give up then? Like, or not give?
Yeah.
Am I giving up, or would that be giving up, or changing strategy? I don't know. It just seems.
Well, there's other solutions that he's going to come by, and some of them are maybe like they're worth thinking about. Like what he's saying is, in our current situation with our current membership being the age that it is, being the particulars that we have, if we haven't done it in the last 28 years, it's not like the conditions have gotten better this year.
Yeah.
So he's going to propose some more radical changes, like, what if we sold this place and restarted somewhere else? Or what if we merged with another church? So I think he's thinking through various different ways of still, I don't think he's throwing in the towel. I think he's proposing solutions.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's a way that you can tell like growth is not an option for us, other than just having like brutal honesty and awareness of your situation. Like he mentioned at the beginning when he was asking the deacons to run the numbers, like how long can we stay open?
Yeah.
He said something to the effect of like, I've kind of known this has been the trajectory for a while. Somewhere in that while, you have to have that discussion. Like, who do we have here right now, and who's actually motivated to do ministry?
Yeah.
who, I'd be curious, like I'd love to ask Paul, where did these 5 new members come from? Like, was it through his effort? Or was it somebody in the congregation who said, hey, why don't you come to church with me? Or they preach the gospel or something like that. I think that's key. Yeah. If it's just the leader and the church is not engaging in ministry,
you have a different problem.
It's death time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it seems like Paul's exercising like some really, I don't know, like good leadership here. Like, hey, everybody, this is the case. This is the scenario. Here, let's bring out some other options. I'm not sure if we have those other options available, but I do have them listed out here. He said that he's talking about extending the runway. Jake had those those timestamps, I believe. Let's see here. And he talked about separating his own future from the church's future, about pastoral legacy and identity and calling, which was, I mean, I don't know. That's kind of important right there. Like what we talked about earlier. But what innovative models of life-giving decline versus healthy transition is he trying to imagine here? So he was talking about, renting it out, taking out a line of credit from his buildings and to renovating them to start a rental facility. I'm not sure if he said that.
Okay, so we don't have the clips of some of his other solutions?
I don't think so.
Okay. So I'll do my best to just by memory try to remember some of them. One is that he had talked about borrowing against the assets to improve their facility so that they could rent out part of their facility. And apparently, and I mean, I've never been there, so I don't know, but apparently their building is such that they have a couple other buildings that can hold both larger groups and then some smaller groups. But there'd need to be some improvement. He talked about at one point they had a school that was renting from them. And
he lost money on the school.
Yeah, like that was maybe like a money loser. But the point was, one other option would be to improve their facility so that they could use it as rental. But then he wants to get real about that too, because he said, well, but how much money are we really going to make from these rentals? Are we going to be good at being a landlord? And is that really going to change the game too much? So that was one of the things he talked about. He talked about, is it possible to merge with some other churches in the classis? Like maybe there's a few ministries that are all in about the same point, but is there a way to bring them together and find some new way forward? At one point, he talks about just selling the asset in total, and then... I have the timestamps now. Okay. Which one do you want to give, Saran?
I have selling the asset.
Oh, yeah, let's do selling the asset.
Okay.
Since I was talking about that.
Yeah, perfect.
Should we...
Sell the property, downsize, and or restart. Churches seldom appreciate the fact that their facility asset is a ministry asset. While I don't know the current value of our property on Florin Road in Amherst, even before I came to the church has had interested buyers for the property. We're right on a major corner, and so there would be a lot of interest in the property once we put it up for sale. If the church sold the property, that money could be used to plant a new church. A world of decisions would need to be made about this scenario. Where would we like to plant? Same neighborhood, Elk Grove, Natomas, Midtown, Woodland, Rancho Cordova, etc. Who would the leader be? Would Paul like to do this? Is he too old and tired? What sort of model would it be? Could the internet presence be an asset towards something like this? In what way would this still be living stones? Downsize, sell the facilities and free up a lot of staff, program resources. The storefront would have some office space and space enough for Sunday morning gathering, on weekends, coffee break, estuary, et cetera, et cetera. A little bit more exposure, could potentially add some new people. There are leasing costs, but the maintenance and overhead on a smaller lease space requires less volunteer maintenance, and parking usually works out well because Sunday a.m.
Okay, so he talks about selling the asset, selling the land. Talks about if we sell, does this go to a church plant? And then he says, am I the right fit for that? And then he gives a face it's like, too old and tired, which is honest, I guess. Good. I don't know. What goes through your head as you kind of think through, talk through some of these positions or options as a pastor?
Well, I think he's just contemplating them,
Yeah.
which is good. I think he realizes, among all these options I'm laying out, we're going to have to together find a way, figure out how we're going to decide which one we want to do. Mm-hmm. And then that's going to cause a big disruption and a lot of change. And what does that mean for everybody? What's it mean for me? So I think he's just acknowledging, wow, in this next year, we're likely to undergo some process or another that will make it that Living Stones will not be what it once was. And how's that going to work?
If Paul was in this room right now, or if any other church planner or pastor of a similar church was in this room, what would be the questions you would ask them?
Oh, Zach is a professional at this.
About this scenario particularly.
Yeah, I guess so. Or anything similar.
What would it be like to plant a church? Like, he mentioned at the end, in what way would this still be Living Stones? So I'd be asking, like, would it be a complete, like, identity rebrand, like a new launch? Is it brand new? I'd say, actually, where I'd be the most curious is what's contributed to the maturity that he exhibits when he offers he might not be the leader. Like, what is it in you that you've seen change, or that God has worked in you that you're able to hold this loosely? I'd be really curious about that.
As someone who relaunched, I guess, 3 churches in the Sunlight area, what was can you walk us through your mentality, some of that experience, Lake Worth, Miami, Winter Garden? Were there similarities in between all 3? How were they different? How were they similar?
Each one was different.
What'd you learn?
So he made the point that every church is unique. That was true. Each one was different. This leadership question is a very important question. So in Lake Worth, what I think made that launch possible was that there was not an existing pastor. We were able to bring in Chris, who served as a new pastor. And once Chris sort of got on the ground, he realized, hey, it would be really great if this weren't Lake Worth Christian Reformed Church anymore, but it were Sunlight. So that's that identity thing. Will this be Living Stones or not? Chris really saw that taking on Sunlight's identity was a key toward that Lake Worth Christian Reformed Church's future.
Why?
I think, I don't want to speak for Chris, but this is, I think, what went into his thought process, which is, okay, if I'm going to come and there's going to be complete church renewal, then we're going to need a new vision, a new mission statement, new strategies, a new identity, new website, new marketing materials, new whatever. Or, and that could be very painful to negotiate with everyone, or I could just have that tomorrow by, the name is Sunlight Community Church. Here's our website. Here's our logo. Here's our promotional materials. Here's our vision. Here's our mission. Here's our strategy. And so there was just a ton of efficiency in instead of trying to invent some new thing that would have, uncertainty around its success. Why don't we just take something that's succeeding and just adopt that wholeheartedly, and off we run?
Mm-hmm. And also, if you keep it as Lake Worth, then one of the secret motivations or the hidden motivations is you're trying to recover what was. I think that's a big part of the strategy.
Yeah. Yep. So, I'll just admit that this is the first time that we, Sunlight, got involved in this kind of renewal so closely, as we took on Lake Worth Christian Reformed Church. And when we took it on, I didn't have the idea that it would become Sunlight Community Church. I had the idea that it would continue to be Lake Worth CRC. But Chris, I think, had a lot of insight. And when I thought about it, I was like, wow, Chris, you're absolutely right. And so that was the first time that we had a second campus of the same church. And so in many ways, I mean, I would just say Chris was the one who had the wisdom to say, hey, this is the best way forward. Now, when we went down to Good Samaritan Church, there was, first of all, they worship in Spanish there, not English. So that was different. We had a leader in John Granada who was first leading from a distance from here in Port St. Lucie, but then finally moved to Miami. And it was just, it was obvious because we had different dynamics that, yeah, the same thing we had done on Lake Worth, it makes the most sense. So that's when we made Sunlight Miami. And yeah, we share an identity. They're one of our campuses. And I think that made a lot of sense. John understood Sunlight. He understood our ministry, our disciple multiplication, and it just made a lot of sense. And then the situation in Winter Garden was completely different because there were no people left. There was just a building. There was just a location. So I think over the course of time, one of the things I've realized is you need to have leaders. You're not going to go anywhere without leaders to lead it. And to the extent that you can work together, that's better than working by yourself. So I think one of the things that we've learned probably collectively, or I'll just say I learned, is it's so much better to be on a team than be a lone ranger. So, yeah, when it comes to just facing all these realities, all these were declining churches, and I think it's actually the fact that we were able to work together as a team that helped these declining realities turn into things that are moving forward again. So you can get some kind of positive dynamic by working together. And I think that's been a real positive at Sunlight that, yeah, all these pastors don't feel alone. We all feel friendship, and we can turn to each other and be like, okay, this is what I'm facing, this is what I'm going through. There's not one mind working on the problems, but many minds working on the same problems. Yeah. All that's a positive. So I don't know, Paul's a pretty connected guy. He has a lot of friends, but is there a church nearby that could just come in and say, you know what, we believe in this. Let's pour resources and money and people and I don't know.
That might be a good option.
It
right?
might.
Like of all the
there
options.
is such a thing.
Yeah, if you're listing out all these options that.
Or maybe, as he mentions, maybe combining with some others and then working as a team on this combined thing rather than everyone working separately.
Yeah, I wonder how that is, like changing out or giving a new vision. Like, how difficult is that? I mean, probably difficult, but like how difficult is that, right? And there's definitely like residual sentiment about what was compared to what could be.
And there's a difference between culture and strategy. So you can come up with all the strategy, but then the culture is like, nope.
Yeah, like we're not doing that.
We're not doing that.
We aren't evangelists or whatever. I don't know. That's not about this church. But
so you have to just acknowledge that a culture exists. And so, I don't know, in some cases, like going back to this question about Lake Worth or Sunlight, saying, okay, Lake Worth was Lake Worth, and it gave birth to a new Sunlight, which was the great ending of Lake Worth CRC. And now, okay, there's this new culture, there's this new process, there's this new energy. There was something maybe positive about that.
And this is part of what we were talking about, life cycle.
Maybe that's what you meant by the grieving and letting go.
What was there some kind of a service or
there was a final service, and then actually, I can't remember whether it was 6 or 8 weeks that we just didn't have any service before we had our grand opening of Sunlight.
Yeah, I remember that. And so it was a way to like close out that chapter, and this is all coming to that, and then let's like some time to breathe, and then okay, we're back into it.
Well, 6 to 8 weeks gives people time to adjust to like a new normal, right? Lake Worth CRC is not a normal part of their life anymore.
Yeah,
I know it doesn't erase the history of it, but it does establish that's not here anymore.
Have you seen any of that transitions during your time with PCR?
No, but I remember when I was in Grand Rapids, there were 3 churches that were pretty similar in size and culture, generally speaking, and we had started talks about like what would it look like for the 3 of us to come together.
Oh, okay.
Because we all recognize that with our current church size, like the amount of enthusiasm and resources just weren't there to sustain like a real big movement of ministry. But if the 3 of us combined, we could do some real cool things. But we got together one night with some elders and the pastors of each of those churches just to float the idea and think through like what could this be, cast some vision.
Yeah, didn't happen.
I mean,
It sank.
25 seconds in the conversation is, where are we going to meet? And then it was like, okay,
No.
I'm not going to leave my building, come to your building.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That kind
that's
of thing.
exactly
And
right.
so it's tough.
Yeah. I think this is a conversation to keep on being had within the denomination. I think this is something that we need to do exactly what Paul is doing. Hey, let's bring this stuff to the table. Let's not keep turning a blind eye to these statistics. This church is one of probably many. This is not a outlier situation. I don't think that's what we've kind of gathered here. You said about 50% of churches need to be having something like this conversation.
Everybody would benefit from it for sure. But
Yeah.
I think, you're right. Like we need to have the conversation, but I think we also need really clear metrics on the life cycle. Every situation is different, but how can a congregation, like what's the objective raw data that a congregation could look at and say, we have to deal with this beyond just
So we
ours.
actually have something like that as part of our ministry because we have the Center for Church Renewal. And if you go to our website, maybe we put that in the notes, churchrenew.org. If you go there, we have a congregational assessment tool. And basically, you have a few people from the congregation answer the questions honestly, and then you will know where you are at in the life cycle.
Yeah, that's probably very helpful. Totally free.
Totally free. Go on, take this CAT test. You will know where you are in the life cycle by taking this test.
So I'm familiar with the Church Vitality Index. That's
Right.
That's objective data.
It is.
This is like self-reporting the life cycle questions that you're asking, right?
Well, here's what we do for the Center for Church Renewal is actually we pay attention to the Church Vitality Index as well. But, actually, I think the congregational assessment tool that we have, we call it the CAT.
Congregational assessment tool.
This congregational assessment tool actually, instead of just being kind of like, I don't know, cold data, is more qualitative as well. And I think just by going through and honestly answering the questions, you can kind of figure out really where you're at and what the next step should be. So I recommend if there's anybody listening and they're interested to take this congregational assessment tool. And it's just data. I mean, you don't have to do anything because you took it, but now there's at least some kind of process that's been created that's outside of yourself by which you can really look at it and go, yeah, okay, here's where we're at. And it's just a way of trying to look at things.
Yeah. And if anyone's listening here, all the links are down in the description below. So we've got the CCR, Center for Church Renewal, down and below. We've got Paul VanderKlay's YouTube channel and full video down below. And if you guys want, we're going to continue this conversation at the Multiply Conference, November 8th. That's the pre-conference. November 9 is when it starts. Starts with a welcome party, so it'll start off well. So I know we're talking about tough things, but let's party in the middle of it. Thanks, Wise One, Mr. Multiply, for joining us on the Disciple Standard Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
The future is now.